I have to make an apology because everyone that's preceded me, and I think everything has been incredible. It's been short compared to what I'm about to read. So if any you want to go to the restroom or eat, please, I'm not going to take it personally. Okay? Or if you want to play Hey Jude when I'm reading this. Okay. It's in. Just okay. Maybe Catherine will show up. Okay. Yeah. It's entitled. It's called A Different Room, so keep that in mind. In Ian Forster's book, A Room with a View, Lucy Honeychurch and her chaperone Charlotte were given a room in the Pensione Bertolini in Florence. Charlotte was gravely disappointed, for she had requested a room with a view and was given a room overlooking a courtyard. Luckily, Mr. Emerson, who was also staying in the Pensione, voluntarily exchanged his room for theirs, exclaiming, "Women like looking at a view, men don't." Acutely at odds with Mr. Emerson's viewpoint conjures up an experience in my past. I was 21 years of age, living in Germany as an army dependent, with a deeply abiding interest in learning the riches of history, culture, and language of France. An invitation was extended to me by a military serviceman whose motivations were more devoutly driven than mine. I proudly and defiantly displayed my rebel nature, waving a wild, thick, woolly shag of shoulder-length hair, and kept close watch over a still fresh world through sporty aviators. Wrinkled, washed-out chambray shirts of sky blue were worn with tails left out to flutter, with flared Levi jeans completing the populist look I strove for. Demonstrably and emphatically, I stood for all things my traveling companion did not. My youthful restlessness, being harnessed to wanderlust, could not possibly pass up an offer this enticing. So putting aside our glaring differences, off we went. In no time, I was commandeered and bound by duty to navigate our course, and throughout our journey, do my utmost to see that our pious driver would not succumb to sleep at the wheel. I was expected to keep an air of sobriety and discuss only high-flown topics such as history, art, philosophy, and theology. Evidently, our good driver had attended a college in Kansas, where the importance of a good grounding in classical humanistic studies in Greek, Latin, Plato, and Aristotle were strongly stressed. A good part of the day, we had driven along the highways and roads to the regions of rural Alsace, Lorraine, and Burgundy. As we penetrated deeper into the countryside, the more picturesque the towns and villages became, with each of them seemingly dominated by a church, a ruined castle, or a bright chateau, made instantly recognizable by historic or artistic merit. Our trek ended late that same evening. We found ourselves in the Berry region, which is notably famous for its many medieval sites of interest. The abbey was an ancient one and had been established in the 11th century, and throughout its long existence, it had been sacked, wrecked, destroyed, sold off, bought off, and on again, and even put to use as a button factory during the 19th century. Happily, in 1948, the Benedictine order restored the venerable complex to its former use, and the monks had made a name for themselves by making the Gregorian chant its primary focus. Making our way through the grounds, we were greeted by a small gateway, where by ringing the bell, we were swiftly allowed admittance by a very tall monk who silently ushered us into our prospective rooms. During the initial week of my stay, I was lodged in a room with generous dimensions, being barren of all furnishings save a rustic plank bed, which matched the rough floorboards beneath, a thick down comforter to ward off the chill of the unheated cell. Nearby sat a simple chair, and next to this was a very plain-looking dresser. The only excuse to relieve one of the bare white walls was one lone crucifix. High lattice windows dressed with heavy dusty drapes allowed an ample amount of glimmering light to enter and diffuse the room with a sheen one sees in much of the indoor paintings by Vermeer. These windows looked down on the cloister below, with its quadrangle of contained greenery. Spartan though the room was, it was agreeable, yet it evoked visions of court intrigues and power struggles of the crimson-robed Cardinal Richelieu, or the spot-on poetry and disarming wordplay of Cyrano de Bergerac, or sadly Lady Roxanne sitting in the garden of a nunnery, pining lost love. After a week of a world of musketeers, I desired a change of room with a different view. I wanted to leave behind Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and supplant them for something far older and more contemporary with the times during which the Abbey Church was originally constructed, with its severe, vigorous Romanesque style. In short, something medieval. Spurring my courage, I decided to present my request to the Père Hotelier, who acted as our monastic concierge, so to speak. He provided us with whatever needs could be adequately and reasonably met. If I was intending to stay for a month in the cloister, I would very much have a room with more character and more in keeping with my penchant for romantic places. One day, a monk knocked on my door and instructed me to gather my belongings and to follow him. With no hesitation, I quickly complied, as he led me in through rooms, halls, and corridors, and finally, after ascending a spiraling staircase of rough-hewn stone, he opened a very heavy wooden door, which led us into a space transporting me back to the Middle Ages. Proportionately grand, the room featured a ceiling with large wooden beams incised with a fleur-de-lis, the old royal symbol of France. Ornate chairs, ponderous, dark, and upholstered with faded green velvet, were stationed around massive tables. Old books, printed in the 16th century, were chained by their leather bindings to the stalls that held them. Heating being provided by a huge fireplace, roomy enough to step in and move about. Behind this most impressive room lay a very small doorway, which led us to what would be my room for the remaining period of my stay. Smaller than my previous room, I certainly was granted what I wished and got more than I bargained for. The compact room was perched atop a 15th century lookout tower connected to the main buildings. As before, it was homespun in its simplicity, but it did provide me with a tiny sink for daily wash-ups. Only frigid water came out of the tap, so every day I descended the same staircase with a metal pitcher in hand to fill it with hot water from the spigots below. The windows were small in this fortress, as if punctured through the walls. However, opening my window was a revelation, for beyond it lay a landscape Master Bruegel would have gladly painted. Beyond the tall trees, standing just below my view, ran a lulling river, and on it was a gristmill, with steeply sloping roofs of slate so common in the region. A large wooden water wheel enabled the monks to break their daily bread, freshly made. So our breakfast consisted merely of the same warm, crusty bread, slattered with the rich, tasty butter brought in from the local farms, and hot coffee served in large ceramic bowls. Over the river loomed verdant hills, pocketed with caves and grottos, which were the homes of very shy hermits who only came down to the abbey during very important high holy days. On certain evenings, I would sit outside in the front room and practice my French with visiting troops of scouts or local schoolboys who stopped by for a day or two. We would discuss French history, the classic giants Corneille, Racine, and Molière, or even played a game in which we guessed the make and date of the room's furniture. Other times I was forced to explain the American game of baseball in detail, in audibly passable French. I truly felt blessed to have been granted a room, basically for free, that so many travelers would have paid dearly for. As the weeks went by, and the impending autumn slowly wrapping its cool grip of reality around my idyllic existence, it was all drawing to a close. The leaves outside my window were being painted amber, and they shook and shaked in their final glory, while the pealing bells that summoned the monks to their hours of office, matins, lauds, prime, and terce, seemed only to add and compound to the feeling of the sense of time, the fleeting sense of time, But I got my room, a room with a view that is very much with me still. Thank you.